Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to tonight's webinar on how to reduce the electricity costs of your rotary, herringbone, or robotic milking system by up to 50%. We have three presenters tonight, three experts in their field. The first one is Darren Buckley of Alternative Energy Ireland, also known as AEI. And Darren is going to talk about the relevance of solar panels for the Irish typical dairy farm. Followed by that, we have Declan McAvoy, Head of Tax for IFAC. And Darren and Declan is going to speak about tax advice, and he's going to highlight the investment opportunities and implications when investing in solar panels. And last but not least, we have Eamon O'Reilly from AIB Bank, and Eamon is going to speak to us about the finance options available for funding solar PV. So right after that, we're going to go straight into the live questions and answers. And I'd be asking all our viewers tonight to please type in any questions they may have, and they'll pop up on our screens, and we'll handle all questions live at the end with our three expert panelists. So before we kick off into the presentations, I want to tell you a little bit about our company, Efficient Farm Systems. We were established back in June 2012. We have national coverage, team of 51 people, sister company of the Lely Centre Mullingar. A lot of you would know, synonymous for Lely robotic milking, robotic feeding, robotic cleaning. Big company, a lot of technology involved, a lot of people also. Efficient Farm Systems, a team of salespeople, installation engineers, project coordinators, service engineers, and backup support. And we are national distributors and specialists of premium ag tech products. So it's a space we've always been involved in. It's a space that we'll stay in, and we see this is where the growth is. How farmers are going to automate their farmyards to save time, improve animal performance, and also to have a livelihood for themselves. Our customers, approximately 1,550 customers over the 26 counties. We have customers in every county across all the product ranges. So a lot of customers, a lot of support required, and a lot of backup to keep everyone's products working to the optimum. Talk to you a little bit about the products. First product is SenseHub. You'll be all familiar with the old heat time systems, and then it became SenseTime, and now it's SenseHub. It's basically a heat detection and health monitoring system. Very, very, very important sector at the moment. There's been rapid and explosive growth in the last 2 to 3 years. Heat detection systems have been around for the last 20 years, but the real growth has come in the last 2 to 3 years. We have about 75,000 cows currently with collars around their necks, whether they be in milking parlours, robotic milking machines, rotary parlours, or even some suckler beef herds. So it's a huge area. And we firmly believe in the next 5 years, every cow will be wearing a wearable device, a collar around her neck or an ear tag in her ear. So it's a huge growth area, and an area that saves a lot of time and a lot of hassle and gives great feedback and information for farmers. Reliable, robust product, works very, very well, and a lot of people getting on quite well. Next up is the Allflex drafting gates. Options here are 2-way sorting or 3-way sorting. And again, it's a great system to have outside a parlour or outside a rotary to segregate or sort cows, whether you want to sort them into pens, send them right for grazing, or send them left for AI, or maybe for attention. Again, reduces significant labour and is very safe for the operator in handling animals. Next up, we have the hoof count automatic foot baths. Super product to reduce lameness and mortallaro in farms. Comes in many different shapes and sizes, from 2.5 meters up to 3.6 meters. Different widths as well to suit cows coming out of parlours or rapid exit parlours or rotaries. Can also get shortened versions for at the head of robots, depending on the location and also the setup of the farm. The beauty with the hoof count is it saves farmers from having to deal and handle those hazardous chemicals. So it's very safe and easy to deal with. And last but not least, we have an interest in solar PV. We have an association with Alternative Energy Ireland, and Darren will go into that more in his presentation. Again, an area very, very popular, a lot of interest out there. And as electricity is soaring in prices and energy costs are getting more and more expensive, a lot of farmers are looking at reducing their bills by investing in their own solar. And the fact that we have a lot of shed space, long daylight hours, and with the improvement in technology in solar PV, these panels are more and more efficient, reliable, and robust. And just before we finish up, there's new parallel technology coming down the track. And not alone is it just heat detection and health monitoring or drafting, there's mastitis detection, there's cell counting, and milk meters on the way. So in terms of all the technology that's involved in milking robots, we're going to see all that rolled out now in milking parlors, and in particularly in rotaries and herringbones, where there'll be much more technology available for all farmers, not just the robotic farmers. So there's exciting times ahead, a lot of technology coming down the track, and I think we're in the right space. It's all about saving time and saving labor and improving the health and benefit of both cow and the operator. Electricity usage on the farm. As we can see from this pie chart, approximately 80% of electricity usage in Ireland on a dairy farm is coming from the water heating, milk cooling, and the milking process. So it's quite apt that this presentation is going to talk about reducing your electricity costs by up to 50%, because 80% of the electricity usage on a dairy farm is around the milking process. And a lot of that is happening in the daylight hours. So it's a very good technology. We have a lot of customers using it at the moment, getting on extremely well, and there's great feedback. So Darren will take that into later in his presentation.
Thanks very much, Alan, for the introduction. Guys, as Alan said, my name is Darren Buckley. I'm Commercial Director with Alternative Energy Ireland. Here to speak to you this evening about reducing your overheads and your electricity bills on your farm. Let it be a robot setup, rotary, or herringbone parlour. So we're going to delve straight into it, guys. So why solar panels? Most farmers now obviously know what solar panels are and what to do, but we're looking at reducing most farmers' electricity bills by anywhere from 30 to 50%. So 40% is the mean average we're seeing with most guys, but most guys are fitting into that bracket of between 30 and 50%. But it is by spoke. We tailor each solution to each farmer individually. Obviously, carbon footprint is becoming a big topic in the industry, in the agricultural industry, but also nationally as well in other industries. Your ESG score, all of that will be coming more and more into play. And then sustainability, people want to be seen to be green and be doing their little bit for the environment. So that's why more and more businesses, farmers and homeowners are installing solar PV panels. The question we get asked quite a lot is, do they work in Ireland? Are they efficient in Ireland? It's all down to daylight. So the more daylight you get, the stronger the daylight, the sunnier the days, the longer the days, the more power your solar PV system is going to generate. So the graph here you'll see on the screen is of a typical 9 kilowatt PV system. As you can see, it's actually generating more than 9 kilowatts there in the middle of the day. Anywhere from sort of 12 o'clock on until 6 o'clock that evening, it's been generating more than 9 kilowatts. But that was 2 weeks ago. You will see that it started generating that morning around 6 o'clock and stopped generating around 9 o'clock that night. So, but in winter time, that system may not start generating till 9 o'clock and could be finished at 6 o'clock that evening. Again, all down to daylight. The panels convert, or the inverters for the system convert the daylight that hits the panels. That creates a DC current. It goes into an inverter. The inverter converts it from DC to AC. That's what we all use in our homes, farms, and businesses, and converts that to AC, sends it to your main fuse board, and then it's distributed from the main fuse board throughout the farm and business. And as I hit on earlier on, the stronger the daylight, the more power the system is going to generate. So this is a typical system here we see during the summertime of good sunshine and daylight. You're going to see it generating possibly even more than what is spec to generate. So it is. So how much electricity can they generate? It's all down to obviously the size of the system that we would design and spec. So as I said earlier, we would be tailoring a system for each individual farm owner, depending on their needs at the time. So some guys that are milking maybe 60 cows could be looking at maybe a 9 kilowatt system. A guy milking 300-400 cows could be looking at a 30 kilowatt system. But how much they generate is all down to the number of panels that you have installed on the farm. 40% savings, as I said earlier on, is the target that we look for on each individual farm, but sometimes it's lower than that, sometimes it's over it, but generally 40% is the sweet spot. Now, 40% savings is of your daytime usage. So a typical herringbone or rotary or robot parlour, you're looking at them using roughly 66% of their daytime usage, or 60% of their ESB bill is daytime, 33% is nighttime. So 2/3 during the day, 1/3 at night. We're looking at hitting 40% of your overall or yearly consumption. So we're actually hitting about 50 to 60% of your daytime usage. So just try not to confuse that, but it's 40% saving off your entire electricity bill is what we're trying to hit. And that's obviously split over summer, winter. So again, as I said earlier, it is tailored. So we will look at whether you're an autumn or spring calving system, whether you're a rotary, herringbone or parlour. Do you need batteries? Do you not? And the graph below here on the screen will show you roughly when the system is going to be generating optimum output. So obviously it's going to be in the longer daytime hours, or the June, July, August. But the system will work at roughly 15% peak output from December, January, February, and will obviously increase as the days get longer and the sunshine and daylight gets better as well. Another myth out there is that they're not, solar panels aren't that reliable, but the panels that AEI use, they are tier 1 panels. So everything we use in AEI are tier 1. The main brand we use for non-battery systems is Autarco, a Dutch company. They manufacture everything themselves in-house, so inverters, panels, roof rail and cable. But PV panels have 0 moving parts. So the big thing with PV panels is to keep them clean. So we always recommend customers to either take out an O&M package with ourselves to keep the panels clean once a year, or cleaning themselves in-house. But the main thing would be to keep them clean once a year. They come with a 12-year structural warranty on the panels, so as regards the panel falling apart, but they also come with a 25 to 30-year output guarantee on the panels above 83.1%. So the panels are guaranteed to operate above 83.1% in 25 to 30 years if they are maintained. So as I said, cleaning the panels is imperative. It's the same as when you buy a new tractor and it has to be serviced. Same thing with the panels. So obviously one of the key drivers for solar PV is return on investment. How quick can guys get their money back, or how much can the system save the farmer or business? So we're going to look at a typical 2-robot farm milking 140 cows. So a 25 kilowatt system is generally what we would spec for this farmer. But again, it's all bespoke or tailored to the farmer's needs and wants. Install cost is roughly €34,000. Now, we would have to decide whether you're going down an NC5 or NC7 route with ESB. I'm not going to get into that with you this evening, but myself, Matt, Brian or Gavin when we're out on farm can go through that with you at the time. Planning costs, we have a PC sum in here for planning costs. Planning is required now at the moment. There is no planning restrictions being lifted presently, but hopefully this year they will be lifted. You have your tax write-off. So Declan McAvoy from IFAC, the head of tax in IFAC, will be on after me to speak to you about the tax write-offs and benefits of installing solar PV. But with this typical system here, we're looking at on the lower the lower rate of tax, you're looking at 28.5% tax write-off, which is €9,690. We're going to say this farmer has no TAMs left. He's used it up putting in all his robots and building his sheds. That system based at 28 cents in year 1 will save this farmer €7,071, including VAT, which will give him a return on investment of 3.65 years. Now, if we look at someone that has some TAMs left and is on the higher rate of tax, again, same install costs, same planning costs, tax write-off of 52%, €17,680, TAMs grant of €6,400. Year 1 savings is the same based on the same unit rate. This farmer here is looking at a 1.62 year return on investment. So obviously you can see it is a bit of a no-brainer when you're getting a 25 to 30 year output guarantee in your panels, no moving parts, and it's saving you money from the day it's installed. So that's your typical 2-robot farm. But as I said, it is all tailored depending on the farmer's usage on site, but we're just giving a good example here. We look at a guy with a herringbone parlour or rotary milking 200 cows on single phase. Probably 60 to 70% of the market would be covered with this. But typical install cost for this with batteries is €20,700. No planning costs because we want to keep it under the 50 square meters planning restrictions that are currently in place. Tax write-off at 28.5% of €5,900. This guy has no TAMs left. He's after upgrading his parlour. This system will save them €2,741, again based on a 28-cent including VAT unit rate, which is on the lower side. Most of you will be seeing much higher unit rates at the moment coming in on your ESB bills, but a 5.4-year return on investment for this particular farmer. Same farmer, but if he does have the higher tax, if he is in the higher tax bracket and he does have some TAMS left, the tax write-off is €10,764. TAMS grant is €6,400. Year one savings are the same unit rate, but he's looking at a 1.3 years return on investment. So you're generally going to be looking at sub 5 years return on investment on any solar PV system you go in, and that's all scaled. So depending on the bigger the system you go, you might see a slight reduction in your return on investment or a slight shorter time frame for your return on investment, but that's a typical return on investment we're seeing there. But also, just to back up the return on investment, the product that we use is Autarco. It's a Dutch company, and Autarco give a kilowatt hour output guarantee on their solar PV system. So if we design a system to generate, we'll say 9,000 kilowatt hours and it only generates, say, 7,000 kilowatt hours, Autarco are underwritten by Lloyds Bank in the UK, and Lloyds Bank will pay you 10 cents for every unit of underproduction. Okay, so again, when the guys are out on farm, they can go through that with you, or when he gives them a call, they can go through that with you. So I'm just going to run through a very quick case study here for a robotic farm that we've done an install for back in 2020. It's for Gwen and Trevor Carnegie there in County Laois. They're milking 280 cows presently. 3 Lely A4 robots, 1 A5. They've seen roughly a 40% reduction in their ESB bills. And we're just going to look, their unit rate at the time when this video was shot, which is almost 2 years ago now, unit rate at the time was 14.92 cents, including VAT. We have a slide further on that will show you what the return on investment would be today at the current unit rates. So back then, their payback was 5.5 years. So it's in 2 years. We're on target for that return on investment, but with the unit rates after rising, they're actually looking at a much shorter return on investment. So I'm just going to play a quick video of Gwen speaking about the solar PV and what they're doing on the farm, and we'll take it on then from there.
I'm Gwen Carnegie. I'm milking 235 cows with my husband Trevor just outside Rosenallis in County Laois. We started milking with Lely robots in 2013. We have just installed our 4th robot this spring. We have 3 A4s and 1 A5 robot that was supplied by the Lely Centre in Mullingar. Before we installed the solar panels, we were experiencing higher electricity costs. I suppose with 4 robots on 300 acres, the costs were creeping up, and that's why we looked into the solar PV. We found out about AEI through the Lely Centre Mullingar. My husband Trevor was down at the ploughing championships in Carlow, and after a conversation, Darren came out to our farm and just made sure that our farm was suitable, went through the costs, the savings, and what was needed. We attended a farm walk in County Kilkenny last November. It was on a Lely robot farm. The farmer had just recently installed the solar PV panels. After chatting with the farmer, chatting with the lads from AEI, we knew they were a good fit for us. From the time the installation team came to the time they left, it seemed to go seamlessly. They didn't need any help from ourselves, apart from just shutting down the power for the final connection for about an hour. We maxed out our TAMS grant, putting in a robot. So after talking with Darren, he gave us advice that the best grant to get was the 30% SEAI grant, and it just seemed to be the best fit for us. We have 4 robots on the farm and we have a young family, so flexibility is quite important to be able to kind of go when we need to. And then with the PV panels, to reduce the costs of running the robots, it's a no-brainer. Darren ran a PV sol, and between that and talking to the farmers, our projected return on investment is between 5 and 6 years. With the professionalism and attention to detail that the lads in AEI gave us, along with the projected savings, 30-year warranty and the no maintenance, we'd be delighted to recommend AEI to all the farmers.
So that was Gwen there, just giving a brief overview of the farm and what to do on the farm and why they put in PV and what it's doing for them currently. As I said, that video was shot back in 2020, so they were milking 230 back then. They're now at 280 since they put in the 4th robot. This one here we're going to move on to now is a 2021 install, so an install we done last year. It's on a rotary parlour. It's for Brian and Gail Daniels down in County Kilkenny. Brian's milking 350 cows on a 3-phase rotary parlour down there. 36% reduction in electricity bills. So for Brian, we actually put in a 20 kilowatt PV system with about 20 kilowatts of battery storage as well. We put in power diverters for heating his hot water and any excess during the day as well. So we're trying to harness or utilize as much power that's been generated on the farm at all times during the day and trying to harness that on site rather than letting it back out to the grid. Even though, yes, there is a feed-in tariff coming in, it's still much better off for you to be harnessing or utilizing that power your side of the meter than sending it back to the grid. The unit rate at the time when we done the install for Gail and Brian was 16.8 cent. The payback for their system was 5.8 U's. Okay, and lastly, the last case study we have is for a herringbone parlour. We done this install again in 2019 for Jonathan Fennell down in Carlow. Jonathan is milking 120 cows, single phase 12 unit herringbone parlour. He's seen a 38% reduction in his electricity bills. His unit rate at the time was 15.67. His payback was 5.1 years based on the old unit rate. So what we installed for Jonathan was a 9 kilowatt from memory PV system with 4 batteries, 2 power diverters, and they were the figures roughly we were looking at was a 5.1 year return on investment. Just going to have a quick video here of Jonathan's install, so he'll tell you his experience with his system and the road he went with, and we'll look at the return on investment figures then for those 3 farmers at today's current unit rate after this video.
My name's Jonathan Fennell. I'm dairy and beef farming about 3 miles outside Carlow town, milking about 120 cows, calving 40% in the autumn, 60% in the spring, and would rear on all the calves to either replacements or beef. We're milking the 120 cows in a 12-unit herringbone parlour, a 12,000 litre milk tank, and we'd also have an ice maker for chilled water running off nitrate electricity. And for hot water, we'd have 2 200-litre water tanks on nitrate as well, and we'd also pump our own drinking water. I'd looked at various different types of renewable energy, trying to cut costs. After looking around, I thought solar PV was the best fit. All the panels could go up neatly on shed roofs, wouldn't intrude in any space. It also helps supply quite a bit of hot water. It would take a lot of pressure off the water heaters, and it would also supply a fair bit of the running costs of an automatic calf feeder. I found AEI at the 2019 Ploughing Championships. I was doing some business with EFS heat time tags, who I also use for heat detection collars, and I got talking to Darren and the team about PV panels and went from there. The installation process took 2 days. They were very professional, very clean. They turned up when they said they would. They were here early March and it couldn't have been easier. The power was off for a maximum of half an hour on the final day while they connected in, and they gave me plenty of notice of that. AEI first did an initial site visit and then PV Sol design. They went through everything. They went through the TAMS, the SEEI grants available. I was applying under TAMS. They helped me with all the paperwork, all the forms, and they did the forms for the ESB. The farm is 100% reliant on electricity from the grid. I was trying to reduce that and save costs. The solar PV system will supply a good percentage of my daily electricity, and excess electricity will be stored in the batteries for use during periods of high consumption. Excess electricity generated will also be used to heat water heaters. Possibly saved about 40% of my water heater running costs in the last 4 months. From the initial meeting right through any planning and installation and follow-up visits with paperwork and grant information, AI been very helpful, very efficient. In 4 months, saved me 500 quid. I would definitely recommend AI to any other farmer or business.
So guys, as I said, we're just going to hit on those three case studies we're just after watching there now, or reading through. So the robotic dairy farm at Gwen and Trevor's, at today's unit rate, they're looking at a 2.9-year return on investment. But one thing we haven't taken into account on any of these three case studies is their tax write-offs. So no ACA has been taken into account in any of these three farms on the return on investments you've seen, or on these current return on investments we're doing at today's unit rate. So Declan McAvoy there from IFAC will obviously hit on those tax write-offs for us later on. But just to make that clear, the tax write-offs weren't taken into account in any of these three farms. So like, it is kind of a bit of a no-brainer when you're looking at it. 4 years max return on investment down to 2.9 years at today's unit rate at 28 cents including VAT. As I said earlier, mostly any of the guys I've been speaking to, or Matt's been speaking to, guys are paying anywhere from 32 to 45 cents for their unit of electricity. If you're in contract at the minute, you obviously haven't been hit with that, but believe me, it's coming down the line. This is why a lot of guys are going with solar PV. Within AEI, we obviously have a dedicated agri sector. So we do a dedicated team looking after just the agri sector. We have the company split up into three. We have domestic, commercial and agri. Matt O'Reilly is our head of agri. So I'm there in the background to give Matt support as well. But you can see, going by those figures, why a lot of farmers are going with solar PV. So it's obviously to reduce their overheads, saving their carbon footprint, make themselves more sustainable as well, and try and hedge against future price increases as well. So a lot of farmers are ringing up looking about, when they're talking to me about solar PV, is what grants are available. So there is grants out there available, but there's a lot of hoops to be jumped through to get these grants. So the most obvious grant for a guy that doesn't have TAMS or is looking at a larger system is the SEI BEC Better Energy Community Grants. This is roughly about a 12-month process from start to finish. Now, the process has been tweaked this year a little bit. They said that they will be allowing a rolling grant application, but generally speaking, what was happening in the past is you would apply for your grant, or sorry, we would go out and design and spec your system in August to December. January, the window would open for your grant to be applied for. April, May, your grant would be approved. You carry out the install, had to be finished by the end of September. The first week of October was actually the cutoff. In October, the paperwork was submitted to SEI, and in December, you would be part paid some of your grants. So SEI would normally hold on to about 10% of your grant for 12 months to verify the energy savings that we would expect at the very beginning, 12 months previous to that, when we were designing out your system for you. Okay. Now with the BEC, they have said that they will not be funding solar PV as a single measure, unless an energy audit at the farmer's cost that would have to be carried out. And within the energy audit, you'd have to prove that solar PV was the only logical, I suppose, project or measure, as SEI call it, to carry out on the farm. But even at that, there's still no guarantee that you will get grant funding for solar PV. We have some farmers that are looking to maybe upgrade a bulk tank or upgrade vacuum pumps or something like that. And because there's energy savings attached to those projects, SEI may fund those along with the solar PV. But again, we'll advise you and we'll put you in touch with energy agencies to see if your project is suitable for the SEI BEC scheme. The other grant that's out there, which most of you will be familiar with, is the TAMS grant. So TAMS grant, very, very straightforward once you keep it under the planning restrictions. If you don't keep it under the planning restrictions, you're going to have to be on the planning route, obviously. But we would generally see this turned around in about 6 months from the date you apply. So once you apply within the tranche window, you will see the project finished in roughly about 6 months. They are grant funding generally up to a 9 kilowatt or 11 kilowatt PV system, depending if you're 3-phase or single phase or 3-phase. But it's part of your main buildings TAMS grant. It's not a separate grant like the slurry tanks. It's a main TAMS grant. So if you already have that used, there's not a separate grant for solar PV. Just to make that clear, because some guys think because it's solar PV, it should be treated separately. Currently, it's not. So guys, we're just almost coming to the end of it here now. So just going to put up a couple of pictures of installs that we've carried out over the last couple of years on agri buildings. So there's just a number of them. They're the typical larger systems to be doing, anywhere from sort of 40, two of them there, a 40 kilowatt, a 30 kilowatt, and a 60 kilowatt. The actual top left-hand corner is an install we've done for the facilities building down in Adair Manor. And our team, as I said, we have a dedicated agri agri team. So down at the very bottom there is Matt, and Matt is our commercial sales manager. Matt looks after all of our agri sales. So he does. I'm there as backup. Brian's there as backup. We have Gavin internally, Wellerson internally as well. And myself, Stephen and Brian are also involved in it. So if any have been, I know we haven't had the ploughing for a couple of years, but the ploughing, that's the four of us will be at the ploughing again, hopefully this year down in Ratniska. And then there's, on the right hand side, is some of our install teams. So again, some of you that have got installs carried out will recognize probably one or two of the faces that are there. So just to finish up, guys, just I suppose to let you know the peace of mind of the clients that we were working with, have worked with, or will be working with in the near future. Obviously, John Grennan and Sons there in Rath, County Offaly will be doing a big install for John now, hopefully in the next couple of months, over 500 kilowatt PV system. Hand Engineering up there in Oldcastle, we've actually just recently completed an add-on to Dara's system. He put in 60 kilowatts with us last year and adding on to another 60 kilowatts with us. So again, another peace of mind that he's obviously happy with what we've done so far. Woody's, Chadwick's, household names, the likes of Nissan, Circle K and that as well. So yeah, look, we have a wide range of clients there. So we do anything from 10 kilowatts up to, as I said, 500 kilowatts there for Gremlins. So I'll be handing you back over to Alan here now in a second. I'm just going to put up our contact details there. So we have our office in Tullamore and our office in Dublin. And even Matt's contact details up there as well. If you want mine as well, it's on our website. Thanks very much to Alan again for hosting this webinar. I'll be holding on for the Q&A session at the end of it. So I'm just going to hand you back over to Alan here now. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Darren. Thank you for a very interesting and informative presentation. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. I see there you spoke of return on investments and paybacks ranging from 2.9 to 3.8 years. So I'm sure a lot of our attendees tonight will have plenty of questions regarding that. Just want to hand over now to Declan McAvoy, Head of Tax from IFAC, who's going to discuss tax advice and highlight the investment implications with installing solar PV. And also after that, we'll be followed by Eamon O'Reilly from AIB, and Eamon will talk about the options available, finance options for funding these projects. So I'll hand over now to Declan.
Okay, thanks, Alan, for that. Just what I'm going to cover is some of the tax aspects, and I'm calling it energy efficiency in agriculture. We're at a situation now where we have accelerated capital allowances available for certain equipment, and the VAT rules have been changed to allow VAT 58 claims. So the first thing we look at is we look at just setting the scene tax-wise. The low tax rate, the standard income tax rate is 20%, but the tax rate is 28.5%, which is 20% income tax, 4% PRSI, 4.5% USC. The high tax rate is either 52% up to income of 100,000 or 55% of it. Limited company, if you're carrying on a trade, so farming is a trade, is 12.5%. And VAT can be got back at either 13.5% if you get it installed, or if you install it yourself or buy equipment for it, 23%. So looking at it from a tax point of view, what we will be looking at, the net expenditure after grants and after VAT reclaim will be where the tax effect will be on. So looking at the VAT, the majority of farmers are not VAT registered. And in farming, VAT is very sector specific. Dairying, there's very few dairy farmers registered for VAT, where on the tillage side, most of it is registered. There's a mechanism to allow farmers to get a refund of VAT under what's known as the flat rate farmer order, which allows them to reclaim VAT by way of a VAT 58 on farm buildings or structures. But on the main one, the construction, erection or installation of qualifying equipment for microgeneration of electricity in your own business. So a VAT 58 claim can get it. For tax and for income tax and corporation tax, you can get tax allowances provided it's qualifying equipment. So wind turbines, photovoltaic or ancillary equipment for storage or grid connection. And products as listed on the EEE product register of SEAI. So from a tax point of view, depreciation is not allowed. You get accelerated capital allowances. The write-off is normally over 8 years, but accelerated capital allowances is 100% write-off in 1 year, provided it's on the SEAI register, and it's extended up to 31 December 23 at the moment. The items to get the 100% allowance, a couple of simple rules. It must be used in business, it mustn't be leased, mustn't be on hire purchase, so that means it must be owned. There's no difficulty with a bank loan on it, but if you lease it or hire purchase it, you won't get 100% allowances, you'll get the ordinary allowances on it. So just the EEE register and the schedule, motors and drives, solar panels, lighting, building energy management systems, ICT, heating and electric provision, EVs, cooling equipment and electromechanical. They're just some of the big ticket items that it's on it. So what happens then, for the accelerated allowances if it ceases to be used within the 8-year period? If it ceases, there's a clawback of the allowances not claimed, but if it's scrapped, there may be an extra claim for allowances. And that's something that people will just have to review, as it goes along. So in summary, the VAT is reclaimable. There's an immediate write-off from a tax point of view, provided it meets the conditions, and it depends on the rate of tax the effect. But a top tip is very simple. If it's grant aided, you're guaranteed the 100% write-off is on it. So that's just a flying visit through the main tax items. So thanks.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Eamon O'Reilly. I'm the Regional Agri Advisors with AIB Bank. I'm delighted here to be with you here this evening. First of all, I'd like to thank Alan from Efficient Farm Systems for giving me the opportunity to speak to you here. Earlier on, it's great to hear how Declan was discussing the enhanced tax treatment of this solar technology. At AIB, we're committed to supporting climate change agenda, and we're delighted to discuss some of the finance options that's available for this solar technology. The first product I'm going to discuss is the SBCI Brexit Impact Loan Scheme, also called the BILS scheme. This particular scheme, it's open to all farmers, can be used to fund working capital and investments in your business, supporting businesses that are adversely affected and adversely impacted by Brexit. So what does your business need to do? It needs to declare to the SBCI that you've been adversely impacted by Brexit in relation to one of the 3 criteria below. If it can bring you straight away to the bottom criteria, so it's where your business is indirectly exposed to the UK, including Northern Ireland, where it transacts products, services or raw materials with an enterprise that's directly exposed to the UK, including Northern Ireland, equating to at least 15% of turnover. So if you're a dairy farmer or a beef farmer and you're supplying a co-op or a beef processor, well then you automatically qualify for this SBCI Brexit Impact Loan Scheme. I'll show you now some of the key characteristics of this product. The loans are from €25,000 to 1.5 million. The terms are from 12 months to 6 years. There's no security required for loans up to 600,000. It's a variable interest rate loan with a fixed margin of 3.5%. So the current variable interest rate is 0%. So we're talking at loans up to 250,000, an all-in interest rate at the minute of 3.5%, which is a market-leading rate. For loans greater than 250,000, there's an interest rate there at 2.75% currently on that. So what does a customer need to do? They need to make an application to the SBCI via their website and get an eligibility code from that. So the loan can be used to fund business expansion and investment in machinery and equipment such as the solar equipment that the guys were speaking about earlier on. I'll also just talk now about some of the standard term loans that we have here as well. The term loans here can be financed over a period of 1 to 7 years, unsecured up to 100,000. They have a variable interest rate, flexible repayment options. So the repayment options can be monthly, half yearly, quarterly or seasonally, which will be a case of, say, for some spring calving dairy systems where the repayments will be kicking in from March until, say, December, and no repayments over the dry period. So then security is required for loans of greater than €100,000. If we just look at, say, from what what Darren was speaking about earlier on in relation to, say, the 2-robot farm, and we're seeing on that particular farm a payback of 1.6 years. and on, say, the conventional parlour system with a payback of 1.3 years. Look at it, and when loan facilities on this up to a 7-year period, look at it's very attractive there for a lot of farmers there. Also, if, say, for instance, you're thinking about completing a major capital expenditure project on your farm, say putting in a new parlour from start to finish, or putting in new robots, and you're looking at, say, putting solar involved in it, you can actually put the whole lot together in one loan up in on a term of up to 15 years. So look at, if you're interested in borrowing to finance some of this solar technology, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. You can contact your local AIB branch or your local business advisor, or you can actually contact myself or any of my colleagues here in the AIB Agri team. And our contact details are here on the presentation, mobile numbers and emails, and we'll be able to get your loan application processed through our systems. So with that, look at, I'd like to again thank the guys here in Fish and Farm Systems for the opportunity to talk to yourselves here this evening. And if you have any questions in relation to any of what I've spoken about earlier, we'd be more than happy to discuss them later on after the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Eamon, and thanks, Declan, for very informative presentations. The questions are starting to come in, so again, ask all our viewers to please type in your questions, and we'll try and handle as many as we can in this live question and answer session. So the first question is going to go to Darren. Is everyone live there?
Yeah.
Very, very good. So Darren, roughly, is there a service maintenance on this product? And if there is, what does it cost?
Alan, as I hit on there earlier on the webinar, yes, we would always recommend to get a service contract to get the panels cleaned. That's the only real maintenance on the system, is to clean the panels yearly. So you wouldn't clean them in the middle of the summer. Generally, we'd see guys cleaning them September, October time when the glass is cooler on the panels. Typically, if you're getting ourselves involved, you're probably looking at somewhere between €300 and €500 annually for, say, the likes of a 25 to 30 kilowatt system. The smaller systems, we would often do a training day with the farmer on site and show them how to clean, say, somewhere up to maybe 25 or 30 panels.
Okay, thanks, Darren. Thanks for that. Another question there for you, Darren. A lot of the questions tend to be on your side, but look, there's more questions coming in as we speak. But does the type of shade or the type of cladding or sheeting on a roof matter? And then the orientation of that shed in terms of east, west, north or south. So what is kind of the rule of thumb around the site visit and maybe doing a pre-installation?
Yeah, so generally we wouldn't be, most of the time we wouldn't take orders off guys without actually carrying out a full site visit. Now, some guys would be very tech savvy and would be able to get us photographs of their electrical works. Google Maps is obviously a huge help to us as well. That's where the PV Sol or the system design that Gwen mentioned earlier comes into play, where we superimposing the panels onto the farmer's shed. But the sheeting, obviously, if we're not going to put panels onto sheeting that's near the end of its life and needs to be replaced, we'll be advising the farmer that. But generally, fibre cement, metal corrugated, or your Kingspan trapezoidal or box profile roofing, they're the three main roofs we see on 95% of dairy farms out there. As regards the orientation that was asked there, due south at a low pitch is optimum. So it is. So typically, dairy farms, the pitch would be anywhere above 22 degrees. The picture I have here in the background is of an east-west split system on a 12.5 degree pitched roof up in County Louth. So that system is performing about 6% less than a due south facing roof if it was in the same vicinity.
Thanks, Darren. Question for you, Eamon. In terms of the loan approval and that process, roughly in weeks or months, Eamon, how long is it normally taken to get that approval through? And what are the sequence of events, Eamon?
Yeah, what we're saying here is for, say, a farmer coming into ourselves looking about, say, the typical borrowing there, saying like 37,000 to 40,000 euros. If a farmer's coming in and a farmer's already banking with ourselves, he can possibly have a decision within 24 hours based on the account profile and how he has been performing performing with ourselves over the last number of weeks, months. For instance, then say if a farmer is new to bank, then look at the level of analysis that's required. So like that, we'll be talking there, a farmer would want to be given the guts of a week, so we would, for that type of a 37,000 euro deal. With the particular farmer, say if he's new to bank, he'll need to supply us with 3-year sets of accounts, and he'd also need to supply us with 6 months bank statements and complete an application form. Or if we're going through direct banking, if it's a recorded telephone call, we will be actually able to take that information across a recorded telephone call. So look, we're talking really from within 24 hours up to maybe say in around a week from we receive all the information from the farmer.
I suppose, Eamon, like everything, it's getting all the information together at one time.
Correct. Yeah, and look at if you can try, and if you get the shopping list as a farmer, if you can try and get the full shopping list put together and send in the package, look at it streamlines the whole process an awful lot more as well.
Thanks, Eamon. Declan, a question for yourself. Are there any negative considerations before a farmer, particularly we call a dairy farmer, would invest in a project like this? And why should he maybe not consider investing?
Well, from a tax point of view, there's no negative point at all. It's positive from a tax point of view, because it accelerates the allowances. Instead of writing it off over 8 years, he's writing it off in 1 year. So I would say there's no negative from a tax point of view, and what was the second part of that question, Alan?
Why would a farmer not consider investing, or what type of farmer would you recommend maybe not investing?
Well, you see, it comes down to, first of all, if from a tax point of view, have you a tax liability to shelter? So that shows that you have an income to shelter, first of all. And I've heard some negative comments on it, that if you're farming in a limited company, you're only saving tax at 12.5%. But if you look at it on the other side, you're only paying tax at 12.5%. So that's the marginal rate of tax that you're paying on. So, the guys I would say not to consider it is those that don't have a sufficient income to fund it, firstly, and secondly, don't have a sufficient energy bill that it's going to make a significant saving. It's outside the tax area totally. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Declan. Okay. Another question for you, Darren, from Denny Galvin. Darren, do you have any ground-mounted systems for PV panels?
Yeah, we do. We have a number of them installed. Ground mount would generally, we would see it somewhere between 10 and 15% more expensive to install than roof mounted. For the simple reason being is obviously with the roof mounted, there's a roof structure already in place for us to fix the panels to. With ground mounted, we either have to drive poles into the ground, drive ground screws into the ground and put our poles into them, or pour a concrete pad or dig out down a gravel pad. And then you have the groundworks to get the cabling back to the main incoming supplier, the main fuse board on site. So they're the kind of negatives to ground mount. So if you have a roof there that's suitable for PV, we'd obviously recommend going roof mounted. But if not, we have a number of ground mounted systems done.
Okay, Darren, thanks. Another question for you, Darren, from Thomas. Would you be able to talk a little bit more about the battery side of panels? And is it something that can replace a generator?
I suppose just on the generator side of things, no, we'd never recommend putting battery storage to replace a generator, because we don't know generally how long the grid's going to be down for. Now, luckily enough, the grid infrastructure has been improved over the last number of years. So as regards generators running for days on end, that's a thing of the past now at this stage. But unfortunately, the batteries can only store X amount of energy, and the more batteries you put in to store that energy, the dearer it is. So your return on investment is being stretched out as well. So I generally wouldn't recommend batteries, a PV and battery solution to replace a generator, but it can certainly assist with the savings on site.
Okay, Darren, another question for yourself from Seamus. What is the lifespan of the panels? And will it work on 3-phase electric farm?
Yeah. So the panels are designed to work on it. The panels themselves go into the inverter, as I hit on earlier. So the inverters are designed for single or 3-phase. So again, that's down to design the system for the Pacific farm. and the inverters range from 10 kilowatts up to 110 kilowatts on 3-phase. So they do. What was the other part of that one, Alan? Sorry, the beginning of it.
Sorry, no, Darren, I'm just reading the next question. So we'll come back to that in a moment, Darren. Sorry.
No bother.
I have a question from Stephen Hunter. I have a 8 kilowatt system in 2 years, and I'm operating 2 robots. I would like to add more panels. It wasn't fitted by EAI, but can your panels be added to this system to enlarge the project?
Yeah, in short, it can. I'm assuming that that Stephen is single phase, so he'd probably have a 5 or 6 kilowatt inverter. Currently, under the ESB regulations, if we go over 6 kilowatts on single phase with inverters, we have to put in what they call a G10 relay, which is required for ESB grid protection. And once you put that in, we can add on as many panels as Stephen wants to, up to his MIC, which is his maximum import capacity. So again, we can look at that for you, Stephen, no problem at all. All we'll be doing is adding on our panels, putting in our inverter, and linking the whole system together. So we've done that on a number of farms and businesses over the last couple of years. So we have. So yeah, in short, it can work.
Darren, what is the likelihood? This question is from Simon Hennessy. What is the likelihood, and is there any projected timeline for payment of electricity supplied into the grid by a farmer?
So the clean energy export, or the clean energy export guarantee, there's 2 different schemes depending on whether you get a grant or not. The clean export guarantee is coming into play in June, so they've said. It's been touted at 13.5 cent fixed for 15 years. And the other scheme, which the figures have not been 100% released yet, that will be hopefully coming in play in the coming months as well. Now, you will need a smart meter in place by the ESB to be paid for your export to the grid. So any excess electricity going back, you need a smart meter installed by ESB. You can request that with ESB, but ESB are saying by 2026, all homes, farms, businesses will have a smart meter installed.
So Declan, back to you. In the event the farmers start getting paid for electricity supplied onto the grid, what are the tax implications for a farmer?
Well, as of now, the first 200 euros is ignored totally. And anything after that then is deemed to be an income, and is, deemed to be a separate trade at the moment to the trade of farming. So it's liable, with the exception of the first 200 euros, it's liable to income tax.
Okay.
Or if you're in a company, I should say, corporation tax, so either or.
Okay, thanks. Question from Jim Mulhoyle, Darren. Do the solar panels need to be mounted on the roof in the same building where the ESB meter is?
No. In short, no. We can put them into a building down the yard. Once the cable coming from the main fuse board to that shed or that building is big enough to carry the power back up. So if we take a single phase system, say with a 6 kilowatt inverter, we can send that power back up to a 6 square cable. So a 6 square cable would be a standard cooker cable, say in a house, or be a standard enough cable you'd see put into outbuildings on a farm.
Just another.
Anything bigger than that, we would have to look at cable size.
Okay, another question from Caroline Bryan, Darren. Is there any reinforcement needed on the shed, on the roof of the shed, to support the panels?
Generally not, no. So more sheds now, the power lines now will be centered to current building regulations. So anything built after, I think it's 1988 or 89, the power lines will be spaced accordingly. So no, it's actually, the weight of the panels are quite light. The panels themselves, we're talking in feet, they're about 6 foot by 3 foot. They're only 16 kg. So they're quite light. The big thing is actually wind lift. So the wind getting underneath the panels and lifting off. Again, in the picture you'll see in the background, we mount the panels quite low and quite tight to the roof to stop that wind load. So we haven't come across a roof yet where a structural engineer report is needed for wind or weight loading.
Darren, just Connor, roughly, approximately, not holding to it, what sort of cost and how many kilowatts would one need for the typical 100-cow dairy spring calving herd?
I'm going to assume that it's a herringbone. I'm going to have to assume that it's on single phase. So typically we would be speccing batteries on this. So we're speccing about 20 kilowatts of battery storage, somewhere in around that region, sort of 15 to 20 kilowatts. So you're talking a 15 kilowatt battery storage, 9 kilowatts of PV, power diverter for heating as hot water or any excess electricity. Fitted, you're talking somewhere in the region of 19 to 21,000 euro ex VAT before grants and everything else besides. But that would be turnkey, that would be all electrical works included.
Okay. Declan, a question for yourself from Brendan, just on the tax write-offs. Does this 100% write-off also apply to cooling equipment on farm?
If the cooling equipment is on the SBCI EEE register, yes. Anything that's on it is there. It mightn't encompass the whole equipment, but it will definitely encompass part of it.
Perfect. Just a question, Eamon, from John for yourself. There seems to be a lot of interest out there in solar PV. Have you much applications coming on your desk as we speak, Eamon? What are you seeing from a finance perspective, the uptake at the moment?
Yeah, look at it like that. It's a new technology, and especially with like that with ourselves in AIB. Look at sustainability is one of the key aspects, and our mantra is that as a business and for our customers, we can do better and do better for the climate change agenda. So look, we're seeing an uplift in this type of technology being utilised. But like that, we're expecting to see an awful lot more, especially like that, the way the price of ESB has actually increased and the price of energy is increasing, the way that the shift being more towards the whole renewable space from start to finish there. Also like that, this muted for later on in the year, that there's going to be further SBCI schemes, and these particular schemes will be also enhancing the whole green agenda as such even more. So yeah, look, we're seeing it. It is very much a growth area. And look, we're very much embracing it and looking about doing our bit as a bank there for the whole climate change and sustainability agenda into the future.
So we're just going to run through a few more questions. There's lots of them here. Darren, for yourself, and from Pat, what happens on a cloudy day, Darren? And maybe you might explain solar PV. Is it about sunlight hours, or is it about daylight and dark day, bright day, winter's day, a spring morning? What's the difference?
It's predominantly daylight, but the stronger the daylight, the stronger the UV, the more power the panels are going to generate. That's the long and short of it. But the typical winter's day, if we say 2 o'clock and it's dark, overcast, cloudy outside, the system's going to work anywhere between 15 to probably 50% of its peak or optimum output. Whereas in the middle of the summer, on a day that is very clear, no clouds in the sky, you can see the system operating at 100 to 108%. It was in that slide there earlier on, like May, which we haven't even hit peak summer. We've seen a system operating up and around 100 or above 100% for sort of 5 to 6 hours in the middle of the day. But just on that, Alan, as well, we will do a system design report and show customers every month how many kilowatt hours the system will generate. So we'll go through that with farmers, because some farmers are, say, milking the whole year round and they want maybe a little bit more power in the winter time. So we can look at that for them as well.
Declan, a question for yourself. This is from Joe. I'm keen to buy a solar system, but don't think I'll show a profit this year due to other investments on the farm. Can I defer the accelerated capital allowances until next year?
Oh, because the allowances are on the year it's installed and the year it's first in use. But you come back to that last 2 words, in use. Don't have it in use this year, and you will be able to claim it next year. Yeah, okay. It's the first year it comes into use is where you get the allowance. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good answer. Thanks for that. Darren, yourself, Caroline Bryan, can I run the solar alongside existing wind turbines?
Yes, once the existing wind turbines are grid tied and certified, yes, they can work hand in hand, no issue. We've done a couple of installs on farms with wind turbines and solar side by side.
Declan, just a question from another farmer. What tax advice would you give dairy farmers this year to minimise their liabilities outside the scope of this discussion tonight? Or what advice are IFAC giving farmers, or what's been said?
Well, I think the focus has to move away from just tax liability this year. You know, people have to look at the impending volatility, prices of inputs and everything, and probably look at the opposite of minimizing tax in maximizing cash, and have cash available to hit any downturn and that type of thing. You know, if you have cash and you're financially strong, you can weather most things, and that's where I will be saying that people should look at.
Thanks, Declan. Darren, another question for you from John Corr. If there's a power cut and there's a drop from the grid, is there sufficient energy in the batteries to cut in and stopping this man's robots shutting down from a power failure?
It depends on what charge is in the batteries in that day. I'm not trying to avoid the question, but the batteries themselves, again, if we say 15 kilowatts, the batteries, a 15 kilowatt battery could possibly run one robot for maybe an hour and a half. After that, then the batteries will be shutting down. The inverters, just to be clear on that, the inverters, if there's no AC or no power coming in from the ESB, the PV system has to shut itself down. It's an ESB requirement on safety side of things. So it's actually European wide now, that if there's no power coming in from the grid, the inverter has to shut itself down. So that's that. So the PV system, if there's no ESB, you can pin a grid changeover switch like a generator and try run it off the batteries, but it depends on what charge is in the batteries at those time, or that time you're switching over.
Eamon, a question from Tom Lavin. He said that the payback ranged from 2.9 to 3.8 years. So let's call it 3 to 4 years, along the examples that Darren gave. What's the appetite in the bank for lending here? Is this something the bank are very pro, or is it early days for it yet, Eamon?
No, look, we'll be very pro, because think about it. What's this technology doing? It's actually moving our reliance away from ESB that's generated from fossil fuels. So what is it? It's moving towards, as I said earlier, the green, the sustainability agenda. So absolutely, very, very much pro towards this. Like that, if a farmer wants to borrow and put this over a term of 7 years in order for it to facilitate his cash flow, absolutely no issue in doing that whatsoever. So like that, if a farmer can pay it off over a shorter period of time, great, he'll be paying less interest. But like that, as Declan said earlier on, this year it's all about cash flow. It's about having enough working capital and having enough headroom in your overdraft that you're in a financially strong position with the level of volatility that's there. And look at, we're seeing dairy prices, we're seeing beef prices at records highs, but we're seeing the inputs at records high. So everybody needs to be very clued into how they're running their business from an output and input viewpoint going forward as well.
Thanks, Eamon. Darren, just another question for yourself from John. What's the lifespan of batteries, the cost of replacing them, and are all your installations have batteries included?
No, not all our batteries have installations included. So generally batteries would only be installed in herringbone and rotary parallels. We'd never recommend them on robots because the robots are running 24/7. In most cases, I know there's some farmers out there where they mightn't be running in the middle of the day, but 95% of cases they are. Lifespan of the batteries we use come with a 10-year warranty or a 10,000 charge cycle. That's the warranty on them. So it's not after 10 years they're going to just drop off. They'll still be working. They'll just be charging less and discharging less as well. The cost of replacing them, it depends on how many batteries you put in, but like a typical say 3.6 kilowatt battery, you're talking it's somewhere in the region of 1,500 quid ex-VAT for the battery. Then for the larger batteries, you're talking more than as well. So, but with the grid or the ESB going to be paying for excess electricity, some farmers are saying, well, I'm not going to bother with batteries. So we can set up a herringbone or rotary parallel with no batteries in place, but with the infrastructure there, the hybrid inverters, everything else there in place. And then the batteries only come plug and play. You're not taking out equipment that you paid for, throwing it in the bin and putting in new equipment with batteries. So again, it's case by case. It's down to cash flow. It's down to all those things as well.
So we're going to be down to the last questions. I know it's getting late at night, but Darren, a question from Noel O'Connor. When you're doing transitioning from mains electric onto solar, is it a seamless automated changeover, or is there an interruption in supply for a while?
You'll never know whether you're running 100% off solar or 10% off solar unless you're sitting monitoring the app. So you get an app on your phone that will show you how much the solar PV is generating, We will have it for non-battery systems where you can actually see how much you're buying in from the grid and selling back to the grid. But what happens is the inverter measures the voltage and frequency from the grid 30 times a second. And if the PV can generate 100% at that time, within that second of what's needed, it will go above the voltage and frequency will go above the grid and push back against the grid, but the grid will always be there on standby. If it can only produce, say, 50% of what's required, the two of them will dovetail. The inverter will match the voltage and frequency from the grid, and they'll dovetail in together inside.
I suppose I might have misinformed you in the question. The question, when you're going from solar back to mains electricity and back to solar, is that transitioning seamless? It
is 100% seamless. You'll never know what you're running off, or whether it's PV or DSP providing you with power.
And Darren, we're going to have the last question for yourself. There's a lot of interest in this technology, a lot of hype out there, rising energy costs, electricity, the green agenda, reduction of greenhouse gases, renewables, etc. What are the lead times and the likelihood and the sequence of events for somebody interested in going down this route and actually having a solar PV operating on the roof of their sheds in months or years?
You're probably looking at, say, for the smaller systems, so anything under the ESB requirements of the G10 relay, you're looking at installs from date of order with ourselves somewhere between sort of 6 to 8 weeks. We've a massive uptake on solar over the last year, 18 months. Excuse me, we have a dedicated agri division within AEI. As I said, Matt O'Reilly is heading that up. He has a backroom team there with him. Myself, Stephen, Gavin, Chris were there as well. We're getting inundated with agri inquiries. So the timeline is probably somewhere between 4 and 8 weeks for the smaller systems. The larger systems, that they sort of 10 kilowatt single phase or 16 kilowatt 3 phase upwards, that's all down to the timeline within ESB. You could be talking 3 to 6 months for those type of systems, but we'll be holding the hand the whole way through on the pros and cons, the do's and don'ts, and giving farmers realistic timelines on when the installs will be taking place.
And in time, like buying a van or a tractor or a machine at the moment, is the timelines and the lead times are really pushed out due to electronic components and just the whole logistics supply chain is in a mess. So have you seen your lead times pushed out? Like, is it taking long enough to source material, or how are you?
No, luckily enough in AEI, we have a very good working relationship with Autarco. As I said earlier on, they're a Dutch company, all tier 1, they manufacture everything themselves in-house. They have a warehouse and manufacturing in Eindhoven in the Netherlands. They are some components, unfortunately, like everything that was coming from China, which is in lockdown currently again. But currently our supply chain is open. We were worried here a couple of weeks ago, but we have enough stock, we've been told, in Eindhoven to tie us over till at least Christmas anyway. So hopefully at that stage the world will start settling back down again, and that supply chain will continue the way it's going. So without further ado, I'm conscious that the RTE +1 news at 9 is going to be soon over at 10:10, and I wouldn't mind getting some of the headlines myself. I want to thank the 3 presenters, Eamon O'Reilly from AIB Bank, Declan McAvoy from IFAC, and Darren Buckley from AEI for 3 very informative presentations, and also for answering 20 to 30 questions there that's been sprung upon them. Thank you very much. Want to thank all our viewers for listening in. We'd up to 100 people there at one stage, so very, very good. And a lot of people have stayed the full course of the night because the questions have been very interesting. Want to thank our production crew here in Efficient Farm Systems of Sean Callan and Niall McGoran, and then thank the team at EFS for pulling this together. So thanks everyone, good night, and best of luck. Thanks very much, Alan. And guys, any that didn't get to answer or we didn't get to answer questions for, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, and as I said, our contact details are up there as well. So don't be afraid to reach out if you want to. All right, Alan, thanks very much for hosting. No bother, thank you.